Cordelia Brennan pressed both hands flat against the wet wood of that freight platform and made herself stand. Not because she had somewhere to go, not because anyone was waiting, but because sitting down in the Montana mud while a whole territory walked past her looking without seeing was the one thing she would not give them. She had come too far, sold too much, believed too hard in a letter written by a man who took one look at her and left without a single word. She was 38 years old. She was 3 months pregnant with a child that she had not chosen to carry, and she was not done yet. The rain came down sideways off the mountains, the kind that soaked through wool in under a minute and turned the platform boards black with water. Her trunk sat beside her leather straps, dark and swollen. Everything she owned in the world packed tight. Everything except the shame which she wore like a second skin beneath her traveling dress. The dress was new. She had bought it specifically for this moment, for the first impression she would make on Earl Dawson, the man whose advertisement she had answered with the last of her savings and the full weight of her desperation. Seeking a capable woman, hard worker, good Christian values, willing to build something from the ground up. I am not looking for pretty. I am looking for real. That last line, that was the one that had done it. Cordelia had never been pretty. She knew that the way she knew her own name, plainly, without drama or self-pity, the way you know a fact that has been confirmed so many times it stopped hurting. She was a large woman, broad through the shoulders and heavy through the hips. Strong hands built for work and a face that was honest more than it was delicate. She had dark hair that curled when it was damp, which in this Montana rain meant it was curling now, plastered against her cheeks and the back of her neck. She had stood on this platform for 20 minutes. Waiting. Earl Dawson was late. That was fine. She could wait. She had stood in factory lines in 10 below cold, waiting for gates to open. She had stood in relief lines the winter her mother died, too proud and too desperate in equal measure. Then she heard the wagon, the splash of wheels through standing water, the snort of horses pushed faster than they wanted to go in the weather. And then Earl Dawson himself climbing down from the buckboard seat, his face turned against the rain. Not looking at her yet, not until he turned, and his eyes landed on her. Cordelia had seen that look before. She had been seeing it her whole life. She recognized it the way you recognize a dog that is going to bite, before it moves, before it shows teeth. In that one suspended moment where the decision is still happening behind the eyes. Earl Dawson went white. Not pale, white, like something vital had drained out of him between one heartbeat and the next. His mouth opened. His gaze did the slow, unwilling survey, top to bottom, came back to her face with the particular expression of a man who had bought something from a catalog and received something entirely different. He started, stopped, tried again. You're Cordelia Brennan. I am, she said. Her voice did not shake. She was proud of that later, the steadiness of it. And you'd be Earl Dawson. I recognize you from the photograph you sent. Right. He pushed a hand through his wet hair. He would not look at her straight. His eyes kept sliding sideways, to the station wall, to the tracks, to the ground between them. Right, I miss Brennan. This ain't going to work. She felt the words hit her somewhere below the sternum, felt the air go out of her, but she kept her face still. I beg your pardon, she said. I meant a woman who was... He gestured vaguely miserably at all of her. More. More what, Mr. Dawson, she said quietly. Go on, say it plain. He did not. Of course he did not. Men like Earl Dawson never said it plain. They just implied it with their eyes and their gestures and their inability to hold still. And then they let the woman carry the weight of understanding what they meant. He turned, he walked back to his wagon, he climbed up onto the seat, he drove away. No apology, no money for the ticket back, no acknowledgement that she had sold every piece of furniture she owned, every extra dress, her mother's silver-backed hairbrush, 2 weeks of wages, held back from herself through sheer willpower. All of it poured into a train ticket, in a traveling trunk, in a dress she had bought specifically to make a good first impression. He just drove away. Cordelia stood on that platform until the sound of his wheels faded into the rain. The station master was watching from inside his window. She could see his shape behind the glass, the glow of his lamp, the fact that he was not coming out. Down the road, 2 men leaning against the post office wall had watched the whole exchange, and one of them was already laughing. That low sideways sound that men make when a woman's misfortune strikes them is funny. She picked up her trunk. It was heavy. It had always been heavy. She had been hauling her own weight and everyone else's for 15 years. And one more heavy thing was not going to be what brought her down. She dragged it to the edge of the platform, down the 2 steps, onto the muddy main road of Coldwater Creek, Montana territory. She dragged it 1 block, 2. Her arms were burning, the rain was coming harder now, and the sky had gone a color she had never seen before. Deep green-black at the edges, the kind of sky that meant the storm was just getting started. She made it to the middle of the 3rd block before her arms gave out completely. She sat down on top of the trunk. And then, because she was alone and the rain was loud enough to cover it, and she was 38 years old and had been strong for every single person in her life for 15 years straight, and pregnant with a child, conceived in violence, and carrying a shame so heavy she could barely breathe under it, she wept. Not softly, not decorously, the hard, full kind. The kind that lives in the chest for years waiting for a moment of pure privacy to break through. Her shoulders shook. Her breath came ragged and harsh. The rain came down on her, and the people of Coldwater Creek walked around her, men and women both, parting like water around a stone. Not one of them pausing, not one offering a word or a hand or even the dignity of acknowledgement. She was a large woman, crying alone in the rain in the middle of the road. And to the town of Coldwater Creek, she was invisible. She never heard him approach. The rain was too loud, and she had her face in her hands. The first she knew of him was a voice, not raised, not performative, just steady and real as the ground under her feet. "Ma'am?" She did not look up. "Ma'am?" She raised her head. He was lean and weathered, 43 years old, standing with his hat in his hands in the rain, like he had all the time in the world and was not concerned about getting wet. He had gray at his temples and lines around his eyes, and the look of a man who had done hard things and did not talk about them. His eyes were dark, and they were looking at her directly. Not the sliding, sidelong look she had gotten from Earl Dawson, not the amused look from the men at the post office. Direct, even. She recognized that kind of looking. It was rare enough that she almost did not know what to do with it. "I don't need your pity," she said. Her voice was rough from crying, but she held it level. "I ain't offering any," he said. "I'm offering a dry place to sit and something hot to eat if you want it." She studied him long enough to be rude by the standards of polite society, which she had long since stopped caring about. She was looking for the angle, the catch, the thing underneath. She had been offered charity before by men who wanted something back for it, and she had learned to see it coming. She did not see it here. "I don't know you," she said. "No, ma'am," he said. "Name's Jonas Holt. I've got a cattle ranch about 4 miles out. My roof don't leak and my stove works." He put his hat back on. A simple, settled gesture. "That's the whole offer. Take it or leave it." She looked at him for another long moment. Then she said, "Cordelia Brennan, and I earn my keep. I don't take charity." "Didn't ask you to," he said. He picked up one end of her trunk. She picked up the other without being asked. And they carried it to his wagon together through the rain, and not another word passed between them until they were out of town entirely. His ranch was called the Broken Spur. The gate sign had weathered down to something that looked more like Brock Spur, which Cordelia thought was an honest enough name for most things in life. She took in the woodpile split tight and stacked high, the work of someone who planned ahead. The swept porch, the one window with a cracked pane stuffed with rags. This man was careful with what he had. He stretched it and made it last. That told her more about him than anything he had said on the road. He had a fire going in 10 minutes. He moved through his own kitchen the way a man moves when he knows exactly where everything lives. No wasted motion, no performance, just work done and done well. She had stripped off her soaked outer coat and stood by the rising heat of the stove, and she felt him deliberately not look at her. Not with Dawson's revulsion, not with the watching to judge qualities she had felt from the women she had passed on factory floors. He just gave her the simple courtesy of her own space without being asked. It was such a small thing. It should not have mattered so much. It did. "You hungry?" he asked, his back into her, pulling things from the cupboard. "I could eat," she said. She watched him set a pot on the stove, and she was moving before she thought about it. "Let me," she said. He turned, one eyebrow up. "I told you I earn my keep, Mr. Holt," she said. "Step aside." He stepped aside. She cooked the way she always cooked, completely, without half measures, putting her whole self into it the way she put her whole self into everything, because she had long since learned that half an effort was how you got overlooked. She found salt pork and onions and potatoes and made something real while the storm worked itself against the windows. And she talked while she worked, because cooking always opened something up in her that the rest of her life kept buttoned shut. "I answered his advertisement," she said, not looking away from the pot. "Earl Dawson's. He wrote that he needed a capable woman, hard worker, good Christian values." She paused, her stirring slow and rhythmic. "Said he wasn't looking for pretty, said he was looking for real." Jonas sat at the table, said nothing. She could feel that he was listening, the way some people know how to listen without filling it up with themselves. "I sold everything I owned in to get here," she said. "Everything, my furniture, my mother's hairbrush." She stopped herself before the bitterness could fully take over. 15 years in the mills back in Ohio, 15 years of people looking through me, passing me over, telling me I was too big, too loud, too willing to say what I thought. She turned and looked at him squarely. "I came out here because I believed things were different, that what you could do mattered more than what you looked like." Jonas met her eyes. "They should," he said. She blinked. Of all the things she had expected from this man, that had not been one of them. "They should," she said quietly, as if she needed to hear it again to be sure of it. "They will," he said, "in this house." She turned back to the pot. She did not speak for a long while, and he did not press her. And the silence between them was the easiest she had sat in for years. She slept in the small room off the kitchen. He had cleared it without ceremony. Moved 2 crates, put down a blanket, said it ain't much. She said it was fine, and meant it. She was up before him in the morning. The stove already hot, biscuits made, coffee on. He came out of his room and stopped in the kitchen doorway. "You didn't have to," he said. "I know I didn't have to," she said. "I wanted to." She turned. "I need to feel useful, Mr. Holt. If you'd rather I sit—" "You cooked it," he said. "Sit with me and eat it." She sat. They ate across the table from each other. And the storm had passed in the night, and the morning had come in cold and bright and still. And neither of them felt the need to fill it up with talk. "You plan on staying?" he asked finally. She looked at him. "You want me gone?" "I asked if you were staying," he said. "Didn't say which answer I was hoping for." She considered him. He was not an easy man to read. But not because he was hiding. She had been around men who hid things. She knew the signs. He was simply what he was. The same temperature at this table as he had been standing in the rain. And there was something profoundly steadying about that. "I have no money for a ticket back," she said. "No kin to wire. The man who brought me out here is likely telling the whole town I chased him off." Her jaw tightened. "So yes, I'm staying. If you'll have me, I'll cook, clean, mend, help with the stock. I'm not fragile, I'm not lazy, I won't bring trouble to your door." He stood up, picked his hat off the peg. "All right," he said. "All right," she repeated. "All right, Miss Brennan. You stay." He opened the door and the cold morning flooded in. "I'll show you where everything is when I'm done with the horses." He walked out. Cordelia sat alone at that table, and then quietly so he would not hear through the window. She laughed. Not the sad kind, not the sharp kind, something else, something she had not felt in so long she almost did not recognize it. Relief, pure, plain, unguarded relief. The days settled into a rhythm. She woke before dawn, made coffee, made breakfast. Jonas came in from the barn or the fences or the stock pens with the particular exhaustion of a man who worked his own land with his own hands. They ate together. They spoke little, but the little they spoke had weight. She learned things about him in pieces. He had been married. His wife's name was Serafina. She had died 5 years ago. He did not say how at first, just that fever had taken her. But Cordelia heard the way he said it, the slight hesitation. The thing underneath. She learned he had wanted children, that Serafina had been pregnant when she died, that the baby had died too. He told her this on the 3rd night. They were sitting on the porch. The sky had gone the color of bruised plums, and somewhere out in the dark, a wolf was calling. I wanted to be a father, he said, his voice quiet. More than most things, Serafina wanted it too. He was quiet for a long time. The doctor said it was complications, that she went too fast for him to do anything, that the baby... He stopped. That the baby was already gone by the time he got there. Cordelia sat very still. The doctor said, understanding. Jonas turned the brim of his hat in his hands, that I'm the reason, that something in me that I can't father children, that it was my fault the baby. That's not how it works, Cordelia said, her voice sharp, immediate. That's not how any of that works. He looked at her. Doctors say a lot of things to women when they don't understand what's happening, she said. And then they say things to men to make them feel responsible, to make them carry it. I've seen it. She met his eyes. You didn't kill your wife, Mr. Holt, and you didn't kill your child. He looked at her for a long moment. Thank you, he said quietly. She nodded once, and they sat in the dark, and the wolf called again, and neither of them moved. The trouble came on the fourth day. She had taken the wagon into town. Jonas had sent her with a list written in careful blocky letters. She had managed the errand fine. The shopkeeper, a man named Fletcher, was businesslike and polite. She had loaded the wagon herself, turned down the stockboy's offer to help, and was tying the canvas when she heard the voice at her back. Well, look at that, Dawson's mail-order bride. She kept tying, heard. She ran him off. A woman's voice this time, honeyed with satisfaction. Can you imagine walking off that train looking like that? Laughter. Cordelia's hands stilled on the rope. She breathed in once, she breathed out. Then she turned around. 3 of them. 2 women in good coats and a man she did not know, positioned close enough that it was deliberate, the kind of confrontation that had been thought about before it happened. Can I help you? She asked. Her voice was perfectly level. The taller woman tilted her head. With a look of such practiced sympathy it was almost artistic. We were just remarking, it's a shame is all. A woman in your situation coming all this way only to be turned away. A pause for Wampun. And now staying out at Jonas Holt's place, alone with a man. Her brows rose. That does seem unwise. Cordelia stepped toward her. Not threatening, just close. Close enough that the woman had to look up to hold eye contact. My name is Cordelia Brennan, she said quietly. I came a long way to start a new life, and I am starting one. I am employed as a working housekeeper at the Broken Spur, which is more honest work than standing in the street talking about people you don't know. She gathered the reins. You have a lovely afternoon, ma'am. She climbed up onto the wagon seat, took her time about it, unhurried, settled herself firmly, clicked the horse forward, and kept her back straight the whole length of the main road. She did not let herself shake until she was well out of sight of town. She did not tell Jonas about it that evening. She did not want him thinking she needed a champion. She was not that kind of woman, and she would not start being one now. But when he came in from the fence line with a cut on his right hand he was cheerfully ignoring, she took hold of his wrist without preamble and began cleaning it. Ow, he said mildly. Hold still. I was getting to it. When after it turned green, she wound the cloth tight. You've lived alone too long, Mr. Holt. You forgot that some things need attending to before they get worse. He watched her while she worked. She felt the weight of it. How long were you in the factories? He asked. Since 23, she said, after my mother died. She smoothed the bandage. I'm 38 now. 15 years, he said. Yes. That's a long time to be somewhere that doesn't want you. She looked up. His gaze was steady, and there was something underneath it. Something careful and genuine that she had not seen aimed at her in longer than she could name. It was, she said simply. He nodded once, the way he did when he was setting something somewhere important inside himself. She released his hand. He did not move it right away. Miss Brennan, he said. She turned. If anyone in town gives you trouble... I handled it, she said, a beat. Handled it today. She met his eyes. I don't need fighting done on my behalf, Mr. Holt. Something crossed his face. That ghost again. At the edge of his mouth, the thing that might become a smile if given enough time and reason. I reckon you don't, he said. The woman came 2 days later. Cordelia was in the garden behind the house, pulling weeds from the patch of earth that had clearly been worked before and then abandoned. She heard the horse, looked up. The woman riding toward the house was perhaps 40. Severe in her bearing, well-dressed, she sat her horse like someone who had been riding since childhood and knew it. Cordelia stood, brushed the dirt from her hands. The woman dismounted, tied her horse, walked directly to Cordelia without preamble. "You're the woman staying with Jonas Holt," she said. It was not a question. "I am," Cordelia said, "and you are Prudence Ashworth. My husband owns the bank in town." She looked Cordelia up and down, a slow, deliberate assessment. "I thought it was my Christian duty to come out here and speak with you directly. About what, Mrs. Ashworth? About your condition." Cordelia went very still. Prudence's eyes dropped to Cordelia's midsection, to the place where, if you were looking for it, if you knew what to look for, the slight swell was beginning to show beneath the loose fabric of her work dress. "You're with child," Prudence said. "Aren't you?" Cordelia said nothing. "How far along?" "That," Cordelia said quietly, "is none of your concern. It becomes my concern when you're living unchaperoned for the man in this territory. It becomes my concern when—" "When what?" Cordelia said. Her voice had gone very calm, very cold. "When a woman you don't know is trying to survive in a place that has already decided what to think of her." Prudence's mouth thinned. "I'm trying to help you, Miss Brennan. If you arrived here already carrying, if you came here specifically to trap Jonas Holt into—" "I came here," Cordelia said, "because a man placed an advertisement for a wife, and I answered it in good faith. That man rejected me the moment he saw me. Mr. Holt offered me work. That is the sum total of our arrangement." "Well, then why are you pregnant?" The question hung in the air between them. Cordelia looked at this woman, this stranger, who had ridden all the way out here to demand answers to questions she had no right to ask. "Because," Cordelia said slowly, "3 months ago, a man in Ohio decided what he wanted mattered more than what I wanted. And I have been living with that decision every day since." Well, she watched Prudence's face change, watched the understanding move through her, followed by something that might have been sympathy if it had not been laced with so much judgment. "I see," Prudence said quietly. "Do you," Cordelia said, "do you see that I came here hoping for a new start, that I thought maybe in a place this far from everything I could be, something other than what was done to me?" She took a step forward. "I am not here to trap anyone, Mrs. Ashworth. I am here because I have nowhere else to go. And if that offends your Christian sensibilities, then I suggest you take them back to town and leave me to my work." Prudence looked at her for a long moment. Then she mounted her horse without another word and rode away. Cordelia stood in the garden and watched her go, and when she was certain she was alone, she put both hands on her belly, on the slight curve that was growing there, on the child she had not asked for and did not know how to want, and she wept, again, but quietly this time, because Jonas was in the barn, and she would not let him hear. He found her an hour later. She had washed her face, composed herself, gone back to pulling weeds. He came around the side of the house with a bucket of water from the well. "Saw Prudence Ashworth leaving," he said. Cordelia did not look up. "She came to inform me of my moral failings," she said. Jonas set the bucket down. "What did you tell her?" "The truth." He was quiet for a moment. "All of it." She looked up at him then. His face was careful, neutral, but his eyes were something else, something she could not quite name. "She noticed I'm pregnant," Cordelia said. "She accused me of trying to trap you. And you told her that I was assaulted, that I came here hoping to escape it, that you offered me work and nothing more." Jonas sat down on the edge of the garden bed, right there in the dirt. "You didn't have to tell her that," he said quietly. "She was going to spread rumors either way," Cordelia said. "At least now they'll be based on something true." He looked at her, really looked at her. "How far along are you?" 3 months, maybe 4. I'm not entirely sure." "And the father?" "There is no father," she said, her voice hard. "There's a man in Ohio who forced himself on me in a factory storeroom, but he's not a father, he's not anything." Jonas nodded slowly. "Does he know?" "No, and he never will." "Good." They sat in the dirt together, the afternoon sun slanting across the mountains, the wind moving through the grass. "I should have told you," Cordelia said. "Before I agreed to stay, I should have—" "Why wish I—" Jonas said. She looked at him. "Why should you have told me?" he said again. What difference does it make to whether you can cook or clean or help with the stock? It makes a difference to do what people will think about you, about this. I don't care what people think, Jonas said. He met her eyes. I care what's true, and the truth is you're a woman who needed help, and I had help to give. The rest of it, the baby, the man who hurt you, what Prudence Ashworth thinks, none of that changes the fact that you're good at what you do, and you're honest, and you work harder than anyone I've ever met. He stood up. You want to stay? You stay. You want to go? I'll take you wherever you need to go. But don't leave because you think I can't handle what other people say. I buried my wife 5 years ago. I've heard every terrible thing a person can say about a man who survives when his woman doesn't. He picked up the bucket. I'm still here. He walked back toward the house, and Cordelia sat in the garden and felt something crack open in her chest. Something that had been closed for so long she had forgotten it was there. Trust. The news came 3 days later. Jonas rode into town for supplies, came back at a gallop. Cordelia was hanging laundry when she heard the horse. She turned, saw his face. What happened? She said. The bank, Jonas said. He was still mounted, still breathing hard. Someone broke in 2 nights ago, cleaned out the safe, took documents, ledgers. Cordelia felt something cold move through her. 2 nights ago, she said, Tuesday night. The night she had arrived, she saw Jonas doing the same calculation she was doing. That's not, she started. I know, he said. I know it's not. But, hoofbeats, they both turned. 4 riders coming up the road, moving fast. Jonas dismounted, put himself between Cordelia and the approaching men. The lead rider was a man in his 50s, weathered, hard-eyed. He wore a badge on his chest. Jonas, the man said, his voice flat. Sheriff Calhoun, Jonas said. Calhoun's eyes moved to Cordelia, stayed there. This her, he said. The woman came in on Tuesday's train. Her name is Cordelia Brennan, Jonas said, and she's been staying here since Tuesday evening. That's so, Calhoun said. He climbed down from his horse, slow, deliberate. Funny thing, we got a witness says he saw a large woman walking past the bank Tuesday night, round about 10 o'clock, same time the break-in happened. Cordelia felt the ground tilt under her. I was here, she said, her voice steady. I've been here every night since I arrived. Mr. Holt can verify that. Yes. Calhoun looked at Jonas. That true, Jonas. She's been here every night. Every night, Jonas said. And you'd swear to that? I would. Calhoun pulled a small notebook from his vest, made a show of writing something down. We got a problem then, he said. Because Tom Reeves down at the livery, he's a good man, been in this town 20 years. He says he saw a woman matching this description walking past the bank that night. Says he'd swear to it. Tom Reeves, Jonas said, needs spectacles he's too vain to wear. And he was 3 drinks into his evening by 8 o'clock most nights, I can remember. That may be, Calhoun said. But I got a witness, and I got a stranger in town who arrived the exact same day as a major crime. He looked at Cordelia. That's a hell of a coincidence, Miss Brennan. She looked back at him. She did not flinch. Coincidences happen, Sheriff, she said. They do, he said. But in my experience, when a stranger shows up in a small town the same day something bad happens, it's usually not a coincidence. Miss Brennan has been in my employ since Tuesday, Jonas said. She has not left the property except to go into town for supplies yesterday, and I was with her. Supplies, Calhoun said. He wrote that down too. At Fletcher's? Yes. And before that she was here, working. Calhoun looked at Cordelia again, long and slow. You're new to the territory, he said. You got no family here, no friends, no one who can speak for you except Mr. Holt. He closed his notebook. I'm going to need you to stay in the county while we investigate this. Don't leave the territory. Don't go anywhere without letting me know first. I have nowhere to go, Cordelia said quietly. I never did. Calhoun mounted up. The other 3 men did the same. We'll be in touch, he said. They rode away. Cordelia and Jonas stood in the yard and watched them go. When they were out of sight, Jonas turned to her. You understand what just happened, he said. Yes, she said. They think you did it. I know. And the only person who can say otherwise is me. I know that too. He looked at her hard. Did you? She met his eyes. No. He nodded once. Then we prove it. That night, Cordelia could not sleep. She lay in the small room off the kitchen and listened to the wind work the shutters. She thought about the bank, about Tuesday night, about the fact that she had been in this house, in this room, and nowhere near Coldwater Creek. She thought about Earl Dawson, about the letter he had sent, about the specific language he had used. I am not looking for pretty. I am looking for real. She thought about the look on his face when he saw her, the shock, the revulsion, and she thought about something else, something she had not let herself think about until now. He had known. Earl Dawson had known exactly what kind of woman was going to step off that train, because he had asked for her, specifically. She sat up in the dark. Her heart was pounding. She got out of bed, walked to the kitchen. Jonas was sitting at the table. He had a lantern burning. He was looking at a piece of paper. Can't sleep either, he said. She sat down across from him. What is that? She said. He turned it so she could see. It was a letter addressed to Earl Dawson from someone in Denver. I found it in town today, Jonas said, in the trash behind Fletcher's store. Earl must have thrown it away. Cordelia picked it up, read it. Her hands started to shake. The letter was from a man named Thaddeus Graves. And it said, proceed as discussed. Place the advertisement. Specify the woman should be large, plain, without family connections. Ensure she arrives no earlier than Monday, no later than Wednesday. Timing is critical. When the robbery occurs, she will be blamed. A stranger. A woman no one will defend. Cordelia looked up at Jonas. I was set up, she said. You were set up, he confirmed. From the beginning, the advertisement, Earl, all of it. Someone planned this. Someone wanted me here. As a scapegoat, Jonas said quietly. She stood up. She put both hands on the table. She felt the rage move through her, clean and hot and clarifying. Who is Thaddeus Graves? She said. Railroad man, Jonas said. Fixer. He's been buying up land around here for the past 2 years, trying to force people out, trying to force me out. Why, May? Because my land has the only reliable water source for 20 miles, and the railroad wants to run a line through here, and I won't sell. He looked at her. Serafina died 5 years ago, right after I refused the first offer from the railroad company. The doctor who treated her, his name is Wallace Kemp. He moved to Denver 6 months after she died. Started working for a railroad concern. Cordelia felt something cold settle in her stomach. I think my wife didn't die of fever, Jonas said, his voice very quiet, very controlled. I think she was killed, and I think the man who killed her works for Thaddeus Graves. He stood up. And I think you were brought here to be blamed for a crime you didn't commit, so that when they come for me, when they try to take my land by force or by fraud, I won't have anyone who believes me, because I'll already be the man who harbored a criminal. He looked at her. They picked you because you were perfect. Large, plain, pregnant, desperate. No family, no friends, no one who would fight for you. Cordelia looked back at him, and she felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Certainty. They were wrong about that last part, she said quietly. Jonas held her gaze. Yes, he said, they were. 2 months passed. Cordelia's body changed in ways she had not prepared for. Ways that made hiding impossible. At 5 months, the swell of her belly could no longer be concealed beneath loose fabric and careful posture. It announced itself. It demanded acknowledgement. She stood in front of the small mirror in her room one morning and looked at herself. Really looked. She had never been a woman who sought her own reflection. There was nothing in it that had ever brought her comfort. But now there was something else there. Something that was not hers alone. She put her hand on her belly, felt the flutter beneath her palm. The first movements, small, uncertain, like a question being asked in a language she did not yet speak. She did not know how to answer. Jonas had been careful with her, more careful than the situation demanded. He had taken over the heavy work without discussion, the hauling of water, the splitting of wood, the mending of fences. She had protested once. Only once. I'm pregnant, she had said. Not dying. He had looked at her with those steady, dark eyes. I know the difference, he had said quietly. And that had been the end of it. But the town was not careful. The talk had spread. Prudence Ashworth had seen to that. When Cordelia went into Coldwater Creek for supplies, she felt the weight of it. The stares, the whispers, the women who pulled their children closer when she walked past. She held her head up. She did not flinch, but it took something from her every time. A small piece, chipped away, until she was not sure how many pieces she had left. The bleeding started on a Tuesday. Cordelia woke in the pre-dawn dark with a wetness between her legs that was wrong. All wrong. She put her hand down, brought it up in the faint light coming through the window. Red. She made a sound, small, strangled. Jonas was at her door in seconds. "What is it?" he said. She could not speak. She just held up her hand. He saw. He understood. "I'm getting the doctor," he said. No. But he was already moving, already grabbing his coat, already out the door. She heard the horse, heard him ride out at a speed that was reckless in the dark. She lay very still. She put both hands on her belly. She felt the flutter again, weaker now, or maybe that was her imagination. "Please," she whispered to the thing inside her that she had not yet learned to want. "Please don't leave. Not yet. Not like this." Jonas returned an hour later, alone. Cordelia heard him come in, heard the heaviness of his boots on the floor, heard the particular quality of silence that meant something had gone wrong. He appeared in her doorway. "Kemp won't come," he said. His voice was flat, but underneath it was something that made her afraid. "What do you mean he won't come?" "I mean, I rode to his house. I told him you were bleeding. I told him you were pregnant and you needed help." Jonas's jaw worked, and he said he doesn't treat unwed mothers, that it's against his principles. Cordelia closed her eyes. "So I'm going to die because of his principles," she said. "No." Jonas's voice cut through the dark. "You're not going to die. I'm going to find someone else." "There is no one else. Kemp is the only doctor and there's Hattie." Cordelia opened her eyes. "Hattie Forbes," she said. "The old woman who's been delivering babies in this territory for 50 years, Jonas said. "Who knows more about childbirth than Kemp will ever know?" He was already moving again, already heading for the door. "I'll be back," he said. "Don't move. Don't do anything. Just hold on." Hattie Forbes arrived with the sunrise. She was a small, wiry woman of 73, with hands that moved with absolute certainty and eyes that missed nothing. She examined Cordelia without ceremony, without judgment, with the brisk efficiency of someone who had seen every variation of the human body in distress and was no longer surprised by any of it. "How long have you been bleeding?" she asked. "Since before dawn." "How much?" "I don't know. More than spotting, less than pain. Some, low, like cramping." Hattie's hands moved across Cordelia's belly, pressing, feeling. "Baby's still moving." "Yes, I felt it a few minutes ago." "Good." Hattie stood up, went to her bag, began pulling out things, cloths, herbs, a small vial of something dark. "You're going to be fine," she said. "Baby's going to be fine. This happens sometimes. Body adjusting. Nothing wrong with the child. Just your body trying to figure out what to do with all the changes." She handed Cordelia the vial. "Drink this. It tastes like hell, but it'll stop the bleeding." Cordelia drank. Hattie was right. It tasted like hell. "Now you rest," Hattie said. "No getting up except to use the chamber pot. No lifting, no working, nothing but rest for the next week." "I can't." "You can and you will," Hattie said. Her voice was sharp. "You want this baby to live, you do what I tell you." Cordelia looked at her. "I don't know if I want this baby to live," she said quietly. Hattie stopped, turned, looked at her. "Then you rest anyway," she said, "because whether you want it or not, it's already here, already fighting to stay, and the least you can do is give it a fighting chance." She gathered her things. "I'll be back tomorrow to check on you." She left. Jonas was in the kitchen. Cordelia could hear him and Hattie talking. Low voices, too low to make out words. Then Hattie's footsteps. The door. The sound of her wagon pulling away. Jonas came to the doorway. "She says you'll be all right," he said. "She says a lot of things." He came in, sat down in the chair by her bed. "You scared me," he said quietly. She looked at him. "I scared myself." They sat in silence for a long time. "Jonas," she said finally, "why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" taking care of me, protecting me. You don't owe me anything. You don't even know me. He was quiet, turned his hat in his hands. I know you well enough, he said. That's not an answer. No, he said. It's not. He stood up. Get some rest, Miss Brennan. I'll be close if you need anything. He left her in the dark, and she put her hand on her belly again, and she felt the flutter, stronger now, fighting to stay. Jonas rode into town 3 days later. He had not told Cordelia where he was going, just that he had business. She watched him leave from the window, watched the way he sat his horse, the set of his shoulders. He was going to do something. She knew that. She just did not know what. He returned at sunset. His face was different, harder. He came into the house, sat down at the kitchen table, put a folder in front of him. What is that? Cordelia asked. She was up now, against Hattie's orders, but she could not lie in bed any longer. Serafina's death certificate, Jonas said, and the autopsy report. Cordelia's breath caught. Where did you get that? The Territorial Records Office. I had to call in some favors, but I got it. He opened the folder. The death certificate says fever, complications during childbirth. Signed by Dr. Wallace Kemp. He pulled out another sheet. The autopsy there was no autopsy. According to this, Serafina was buried within 24 hours. No examination, no questions. That's normal for fever, isn't it? They bury quickly to prevent. It's normal, Jonas said, unless the doctor wants to hide something. He pulled out a third sheet, this one older, yellowed at the edges. This is a record request I filed 2 days ago for any exhumation permits issued in this county in the past 5 years. Cordelia felt something cold move through her. Jonas. There was one, he said, issued 6 months after Serafina died, for a woman named Catherine Hendricks. She died of fever, too. Same doctor, same quick burial. He looked up at her. Her husband didn't believe it. He had her exhumed, had an independent examination done in Denver. And arsenic, Jonas said. High levels. She was poisoned. The silence in the kitchen was absolute. Kemp, Cordelia whispered. Kemp, Jonas confirmed. But he left the territory before Hendricks could file charges. Moved to Denver. Started working for a railroad medical practice. Thaddeus Graves. Thaddeus Graves. Cordelia sat down slowly. Your wife was murdered, Jonas said. His voice was very calm, very controlled, because I refused to sell my land, because Graves wanted the water rights and I wouldn't give them to him. So he killed her during childbirth, when she was at her most vulnerable, when it would look like natural causes. He closed the folder, and he's doing it again. He brought you here, set you up to be blamed for the bank robbery, so that when he makes his next move, when he tries to take my land by force or by fraud, no one will believe me, because I'll be the man who harbored a criminal. He looked at Cordelia. And if you die, if you or the baby die, he can say it was my fault, that I didn't get you proper medical care, that I was reckless, irresponsible. Kemp refusing to treat me wasn't about principles, Jonas finished. It was about setting me up again. Cordelia put both hands on the table. We need proof, she said. We need the ledgers from the bank, Jonas said, and we need whatever correspondence Graves has with his bosses, because this isn't just him. This is bigger. Railroad companies don't kill people's wives without approval from higher up. Where would he keep that? My guess, Jonas said, Earl Dawson's place. Graves has been using Earl as his front man. All the land purchases, all the deals, they all go through Earl's name. So we go get them, Cordelia said. Jonas looked at her. You're 5 months pregnant, and you were bleeding 3 days ago. I'm also the only person Graves won't see coming, she said, because I'm the unwanted bride, the desperate woman, the scapegoat. She leaned forward. Jonas, I'm perfect for this. They already think I'm pathetic. They already think I'm weak. I can use that. He was quiet for a long time. It's dangerous, he said finally. Everything is dangerous, she said. But this gives us a chance. They came the next day. 4 women on horseback, led by a woman Cordelia recognized from town. Agnes Sullivan. Jonas was in the yard when they arrived. He stepped forward, positioned himself between them and the house. Can I help you, ladies? He said. Agnes dismounted. The other 3 stayed on their horses. We came to see Miss Brennan, Agnes said. Her voice was quieter than Cordelia remembered, less certain. She's resting, Jonas said. I know. Hattie told us about what happened. Agnes looked down, then up again. That's why we came. I wanted, she stopped. Cordelia appeared in the doorway, against Jonas's wishes, against Hattie's orders. But she had heard the horses, and she knew what this was. Mrs. Sullivan, she said. Agnes turned. Miss Brennan, she took a breath, started again. I owe you an apology. Several of us do. Cordelia came down off the porch, slowly, carefully. For what, she said. For believing the gossip. For treating you like you were less than, because of how you look, because you're pregnant, because you're not from here. Agnes's jaw worked. My family is one of the 3 that got foreclosure notices. We're losing our land, our home, everything my husband's family built for 3 generations. She met Cordelia's eyes. Hattie told us what you and Jonas found. About Graves, about the setup, about everything. One of the other women dismounted. Cordelia recognized her too. The woman from the general store, the one who had laughed. We were wrong, the woman said. We were scared, and we took it out on you. And for that, I'm sorry. Cordelia looked at them, these women who had judged her, who had made her feel small, and she felt something she had not expected. Understanding. You're losing your homes, she said quietly. Yes, Agnes said, and we didn't know who to blame, so we blamed the stranger, the easy target. I was an easy target, Cordelia said. That's why Graves picked me. She looked at Jonas, then back at Agnes. We're going to get the evidence, the proof of what Graves did, but we need help. What kind of help? Agnes asked. The plan came together over the next 2 days. Agnes and the other women whose families were facing foreclosure, whose husbands were being threatened, whose children were at risk, they became Cordelia's network. Her protection. Hattie coordinated. She had been in this territory longer than anyone. She knew things, saw things, heard things, and she had been watching Thaddeus Graves for 2 years. He comes to town every 3rd Thursday, Hattie said. They were gathered in Jonas's kitchen. 6 women, 1 old midwife, and Jonas. He meets with Earl. They go over paperwork, land transfers, contracts. Where? Jonas asked. Earl's estate, the big house north of town. Guards, 2, maybe 3. Graves brings his man Silas. Earl has a ranch hand who does security. Jonas looked at Cordelia. You can't do this, he said. I'm the only one who can, she said. Graves knows your face. He knows every rancher's face. But me, I'm just the pathetic mail-order bride Earl rejected. I'm nobody. You're 5 months pregnant, and you were bleeding 3 days ago. The room went quiet. Cordelia put her hand on her belly. The swell was pronounced now. Obvious, undeniable. I know, she said, and that's exactly why they won't see me as a threat. A pregnant woman in distress. They'll dismiss me completely. She looked around the table. When has anyone ever seen a pregnant woman as dangerous? They moved on a Thursday night. Cordelia rode alone to Earl Dawson's estate, in the dark, under a sliver moon. She wore her plainest dress, let her belly show, let her hair hang loose and damp with sweat. She looked exactly like what she was supposed to be, desperate, angry, pathetic. She rode up to the main house, dismounted with difficulty, real difficulty. The pregnancy made everything harder. She knocked on the door. Earl answered. His face went white when he saw her. You, he said. Me, she said, her voice loud, carrying. You owe me money, Earl Dawson. You brought me all the way from Ohio. You made promises, and you left me with nothing. She pushed past him. Into the house. I'm not leaving until I get what I'm owed. Earl grabbed her arm. You need to leave. Right now, I have business. I don't care about your business, she said. She was shouting now. Full volume. I sold everything I had to come here, and you left me on that platform like I was garbage. Footsteps. Heavy. Measured. A man appeared in the hallway, tall, well-dressed, gray at the temples, cold eyes. Thaddeus Graves. Who is this? He said to Earl. Nobody, Earl said quickly. Just a woman. I I'm the woman he sent for and rejected, Cordelia said. She turned to Graves. And I'm not leaving until he pays me what he owes me. Graves looked at her, really looked. She saw the calculation happen, saw him dismiss her. Large, pregnant, hysterical. Nobody. Earl Graves said, give her some money and send her away. We have work to do. I don't want his charity, Cordelia said. I want what he promised. A home, a life. I gave up everything. Miss, Graves said. His voice was cold. This is not the time or place. Mr. Dawson will compensate you for your trouble. But you need to leave. Now. I'm not. A third man appeared. Younger, harder. His hand on his gun. Silas. Problem, he said. No problem, Graves said. Just an unwanted visitor who's about to leave. Cordelia felt her heart hammering. She had been inside for 90 seconds. Jonas needed 5 minutes. She made herself louder, more desperate. You don't understand, she said to Graves. I'm pregnant. I have nowhere to go. Earl promised me. What Earl promised you is not my concern, Graves said. But it should be, Cordelia said, and she let tears come. Real tears. From the fear, from the rage, from the sheer weight of everything. Because I'm carrying his child. The room went dead silent. Earl's face went from white to gray. What on, he said. I'm carrying your child, Cordelia said to Earl. That's why I came. That's why I need you to. That's a lie, Earl said, his voice high, panicked. We never. You invited me to your hotel room in Denver, Cordelia said. She was making it up as she went, pulling from every terrible thing she had ever heard or read. Before I came to Montana, you said you wanted to meet me first, to see if we. I was never in Denver, Earl said. You were, Cordelia insisted. Last February, the Grand Hotel, room 304. She saw Graves watching now, really watching, calculating. Earl, Graves said quietly, is this true? No, I've never seen this woman before the train platform. Then how does she know about the Grand Hotel, Cordelia said. How does she know about room 304, about the scar on your... Enough, Graves said. He looked at Silas. Get her out of here. Silas moved forward. Cordelia backed up, stumbled, put her hand on the wall. I just need money, she said. I just need... Silas grabbed her arm. And from somewhere outside, a crash. Glass breaking. Silas froze. Graves turned. What was that? Graves said. I'll check, Silas said. He left. Cordelia was alone with Graves and Earl. She counted seconds in her head. 5 minutes. Jonas needed 5 minutes. I'm sorry, she said to Earl. Let her voice shake. I didn't mean to. I just thought. You thought you could extort money from me, Earl said, his voice bitter. You thought you could come in here with your lies and your another crash, this one louder. Graves pulled a gun. Stay here, he said to Earl. He moved toward the back of the house. Cordelia was alone with Earl. Earl, who was shaking, who was terrified. I didn't sleep with you, he said. I've never even touched you. I know, Cordelia said quietly. He blinked. Then why? Because I needed to keep you distracted, she said, for 5 minutes. Understanding dawned on his face. Holt, he breathed. Cordelia ran. She moved faster than she had moved in months. Out the front door, down the steps, toward her horse. Shouts behind her. Gunshot. The night exploded with sound. She made it to her horse, pulled herself up. It took 3 tries. The pregnancy made her clumsy. Another gunshot. She kicked the horse hard. It bolted. She held on, barely. She rode into the dark. Behind her more shots, men shouting, chaos. She rode hard for 3 minutes. Then the pain started, low in her belly, sharp, wrong. She gasped, kept riding. The pain came again, harder. She looked down. Wetness, blood. No, she whispered. No. The pain came again, massive, consuming. She cried out. The horse slowed, confused. She saw the shape in the dark ahead. Another rider, Jonas. He pulled alongside her robo. Did you get it? She gasped. He held up a leather satchel. I got it. Good, she said. Then the pain hit her again, and she doubled over. Cordelia, I'm in labor, she said. I'm Jonas. He caught her as she started to fall. They made it to Hattie's house. Barely. Jonas carried Cordelia inside. Later on Hattie's kitchen table, because there was no time to get her to a bed, Hattie was there in seconds. Took one look. Started moving. "How far apart are the contractions?" she asked. "I don't know," Cordelia gasped. Every minute, maybe." "That's too fast," Hattie said. Jonas water, boiling, cloths, everything in the trunk by the door. Jonas moved. Cordelia felt the pain build again. Felt her body doing things she could not control. "It's too early," she said. "I'm barely 5 months." "Baby's coming anyway," Hattie said. "She's strong enough. We do what we can." The next hour was pain and blood, and Hattie's voice cutting through it all. "Push. Breathe again." Cordelia pushed. She breathed. She did it again. She heard herself screaming, heard Jonas somewhere in the room, heard Hattie saying something about the head. Then a different sound, small, weak, crying. Cordelia opened her eyes. Hattie was holding something, something tiny and red and covered in blood. "It's a girl," Hattie said. She turned. Did something Cordelia could not see. The crying got louder, stronger. "She's breathing," Hattie said. "She's small, but she's breathing." She wrapped the baby in a cloth, brought her to Cordelia. "Here," she said, "hold your daughter." Cordelia took her. She was so small, impossibly small. Her eyes were closed, her mouth was open, crying. Cordelia put her finger in the baby's hand. The tiny fingers closed around it, held on. And Cordelia felt something break open in her chest, something that had been locked for 7 months. "Hello," she whispered. The baby kept crying. Jonas was there, standing at the edge of the table, looking down at them both. Will she?" he started. "She'll live," Hattie said. "If we keep her warm, if we're careful, she's a fighter." She looked at Cordelia, like her mother. They stayed at Hattie's that night. Cordelia in the bed, the baby in a drawer lined with blankets, Jonas in a chair by the door, watching. In the morning, he opened the leather satchel. Inside were ledgers, correspondence, documents, and at the bottom a letter, addressed to Thaddeus Graves, from Senator Harrison Blake, Denver, Colorado. Jonas read it, then read it again. "Cordelia," he said quietly. She was awake, exhausted, but awake. "What is it?" "This letter," he said. "It's from a U.S. Senator, Harrison Blake." "What does it say?" Jonas looked at her. "It says, proceed with the Montana operation. Eliminate Holt if necessary. The water rights are critical for the railroad expansion. Do whatever it takes. The law will not touch us." Cordelia sat up slowly. "A senator," she said. "Not just any senator," Jonas said. "Blake is the chairman of the Senate Railroad Committee. He controls every major rail line in the West." He looked at the letter again. "Graves wasn't working alone. He was working for Blake. And Blake ordered my wife's death. Blake ordered the land frauds. Blake brought you here." "Then Blake is the one we need to bring down," Cordelia said. Jonas looked at her, at the baby, at the impossible situation they were in. "Yes," he said, "he is." Outside, the sun was rising on Coldwater Creek, and somewhere in the territory, men who thought they were untouchable were about to learn otherwise. The baby did not have a name for the first week. Cordelia could not bring herself to choose one, could not commit to the permanence of it, because naming something meant claiming it, and she was not yet sure she had the right. The baby slept in a drawer lined with blankets. Hattie had shown her how to wrap her tight, how to feed her, how to keep her warm. "She's small," Hattie said on the third day, "but she's strong, stronger than she has any right to be." The baby was indeed small, born nearly 4 months early, her fingers like twigs, her cry like a kitten's mule. But she held on. Every day, she held on. Jonas brought them back to the broken spur on the 8th day. He carried the baby himself, held her against his chest while Cordelia climbed into the wagon, moving slowly. Everything still hurt. They rode in silence. The morning was cold and clear, the kind of cold that made your breath visible, made the world sharp at the edges. When they reached the ranch, Jonas helped Cordelia down, then handed her the baby. "She needs a name," he said quietly. Cordelia looked down at the small face, eyes closed, mouth working in sleep. I know, she said. What are you going to call her? Cordelia was quiet for a long time. Serafina, she said finally. Jonas went very still. My wife's name, he said. I know. Cordelia looked up at him. She died protecting you, protecting your land. She died because she stood between you and men who wanted to take everything you had. She looked back down at the baby. This child was born the same way, in the middle of a fight, in the middle of people trying to take things that didn't belong to them. She met Jonas's eyes. If you'll allow it, I'd like to name her Serafina, after a woman who was braver than I'll ever be. Jonas's throat worked. She'd be honored, he said quietly. Sheriff Calhoun came 3 days later. Cordelia saw him riding up the road, saw the 2 men with him, federal marshals by the look of them. Jonas was in the barn. She called to him. He came out, saw the riders. His hand dropped to his gun. Easy, Cordelia said. Let's hear what they have to say. Calhoun dismounted. The marshals stayed on their horses. Jonas, Calhoun said. His voice was different, smaller. Miss Brennan, Sheriff, Jonas said. Calhoun looked at Cordelia, at the baby in her arms. I heard you had the child, he said. I did. Congratulations. Thank you. He shifted his weight, uncomfortable. I came to tell you that the investigation into the bank robbery has been redirected. Redirected, Jonas said. Yes. We, that is the territorial authorities, we received some new evidence. Documents, ledgers, correspondence. He looked at Jonas. Someone left them at the marshal's office, anonymously. Jonas said nothing. These documents, Calhoun continued, they show a pattern of fraud, land fraud, specifically targeting ranchers in this territory. They also show, he paused, they show evidence of murder. Cordelia felt her breath catch. Whose murder? She asked. Several people, including, Calhoun looked at Jonas, including your wife, Jonas, Serafina Holt. The silence stretched. The documents include correspondence between Dr. Wallace Kemp and a man named Thaddeus Graves. They discussed the method used, arsenic, administered during labor. Jonas's hands curled into fists. Where is Kemp now? He asked. Dead, Calhoun said. Found in his Denver office 3 days ago. Single gunshot to the head. Ruled a suicide. Convenient, Joseph said. His voice was flat. Blake tying up loose ends. That's what the Denver marshal thinks too, Calhoun agreed. But we can't prove it. One of the marshals spoke for the first time. We've arrested Thaddeus Graves, he said, and Earl Dawson. They're being held in territorial custody pending trial. Trial for what? Cordelia asked. Fraud, conspiracy, murder, and attempted murder. He looked at Cordelia. You are no longer a suspect in the bank robbery, Miss Brennan. In fact, the evidence shows you were brought here specifically to be blamed for it. He paused. You were a victim, not a perpetrator. Cordelia felt something loosen in her chest. Thank you, she said quietly. There's more, the second marshal said. The correspondence, it goes higher, much higher. How high? Jonas asked. United States Senate, the marshal said. A man named Harrison Blake, senator from Colorado, chairman of the Railroad Committee. He pulled a folded document from his coat. This is a federal warrant for Senator Blake's arrest, signed by a federal judge. We're riding to Denver to serve it today. He looked at Jonas and Cordelia. There's going to be a trial, a big one, federal court, and you're both going to be called as witnesses. The trial was set for 6 weeks later. It gave Cordelia time to heal. Time to learn how to be a mother to the small creature who demanded everything and gave nothing back except the simple fact of her continued existence. Serafina the baby, not the woman, grew slowly, gained weight ounce by ounce. Her cry got stronger, her grip tighter. Cordelia fed her every 2 hours, day and night, walked the floors with her when she cried, changed her, bathed her, kept her alive through sheer stubborn will. And somewhere in the endless cycle of it, the exhaustion and the monotony and the overwhelming terror that she was doing everything wrong, something shifted. She started to want the baby to live. Not for Jonas's sake, not because it was the right thing to do, but because she wanted it, because this small, helpless thing was hers, was part of her, was the only family she had left in the world. Jonas saw the shift happen. He did not comment on it, but she saw him watching her. Saw the way he looked at her when she held the baby, when she sang to her in the dark, when she pressed her face against the baby's head and breathed in that particular smell that was milk and warmth and new life. "You're a good mother," he said one night. They were sitting at the kitchen table, the baby asleep in the drawer between them. Cordelia looked up. "I'm terrified," she said. "That's how you know you're doing it right," he said. Agnes Sullivan came to visit. She brought food, clothes the baby had outgrown, a small wooden cradle her husband had made. "For Serafina," she said, "if you'll accept it." Cordelia took the cradle, ran her hand over the smooth wood. "It's beautiful," she said. "Robert made it," Agnes said. "He wanted to do something, to say thank you." "For what?" "For fighting for us, for getting the evidence, for—" Agnes stopped. "We got our land back. All three families. The foreclosure notices were rescinded. The federal court ruled them fraudulent." She looked at Cordelia. "You saved our homes, you and Jonas, and we can never repay that." Cordelia set the cradle down gently. "You already have," she said. "You came back, you apologized, you brought this." She gestured to the cradle. "That's more than most people would do." Agnes nodded, wiped at her eyes. "There's going to be a hearing," she said, "in Denver, for the trial. Are you going up to—" "Yes," Cordelia said. "We've been subpoenaed." "Good." Agnes's jaw set. "I hope they hang him. Blake, I hope they hang him in the public square and let the whole territory watch." Cordelia looked at the baby sleeping in the drawer. "I hope they do too," she said quietly. They left for Denver 2 weeks later. Hattie stayed at the ranch to watch Serafina. Cordelia had not wanted to leave her, had spent the night before pacing, checking on the baby, making lists of instructions for Hattie that grew longer and more frantic. Jonas had finally taken the paper from her hand. "Hattie raised 7 children of her own," he said gently, "and delivered half the babies in this territory. Serafina will be fine." "But what if—" "She'll be fine," he said again, "and we need to do this. We need to see it through." Cordelia knew he was right, but leaving the baby, leaving her daughter, felt like tearing off a limb. She kissed Serafina's head before they left, breathed in that smell, whispered promises she was not sure she could keep. "I'll come back," she said. "I promise I'll come back." The baby slept on. Denver was larger than Cordelia had imagined, louder, fuller. They stayed in a small hotel near the courthouse. Jonas had a room on the second floor. Cordelia had one next to his. The first night she could not sleep. She lay in the unfamiliar bed and listened to the sounds of the city, carriages, voices, the distant clang of the rail yard. She thought about Serafina, about whether Hattie had fed her, whether she was crying, whether she knew her mother was gone. There was a knock on her door. She got up, opened it. Jonas stood in the hallway, still dressed. He had not slept either. "Can't stop thinking about her," he said. "Me neither. Hattie will take good care of her." "I know." They stood in the doorway, not touching, not speaking. "Would you," Cordelia started, "would you like to come in just to sit? I don't want to be alone right now." Jonas nodded. He came in, sat in the chair by the window. She sat on the edge of the bed. They talked through the night. About nothing. About everything. About Serafina and the trial and the ranch and what would happen after. And somewhere in those hours, Cordelia realized something. She loved him. Not the desperate, grasping love of someone who needed saving, but the quiet, solid love of someone who had been seen, really seen, and chosen anyway. She did not tell him, not yet, but she felt it settle in her chest, warm and sure. The trial began on a Monday. The courtroom was packed. Ranchers from Montana Territory, businessmen from Denver, newspapermen with their notebooks, curious onlookers who had come to see a United States senator brought low. Senator Harrison Blake sat at the defendant's table. He was 60, gray-haired, distinguished. He wore an expensive suit and an expression of absolute confidence. Next to him sat Thaddeus Graves, harder, meaner, but equally confident. Earl Dawson was at a separate table. He looked smaller, broken. He had already agreed to testify against Graves and Blake in exchange for a reduced sentence. The federal prosecutor was a man named William Ashford, young, hungry, ambitious. He called witnesses methodically. Ranchers who had lost their land, bank officials who had been paid to falsify records, a handwriting expert who confirmed the signatures on the fraudulent documents. Then he called Cordelia. She walked to the witness stand on shaking legs, put her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth. Ashford stood. "Miss Brennan," he said, "can you tell the court how you came to be in Montana Territory?" She told them about the advertisement, about Earl, about the rejection on the platform, about Jonas offering her shelter, about the bank robbery and the accusation, about finding the letter, the one that proved she had been set up. "And why do you believe you were set up?" Ashford asked. "Because I was perfect," Cordelia said, her voice steady. "I was large, plain, pregnant, without family or friends, a stranger, someone no one would defend." She looked at Blake. "I was chosen specifically because I could be erased. Because if I died, if I was hanged for a crime I didn't commit, no one would ask questions." Blake's lawyer stood. "Objection, speculation." "Sustained," the judge said, but the jury had heard it. Ashford continued. "Miss Brennan, are you aware that Senator Blake's son died 10 years ago?" "I learned that recently, yes." "And do you know how he died?" "He was shot in a confrontation with Jonas Holt over land rights." "And was that shooting rule justified?" "Yes, self-defense." "And do you believe Senator Blake's actions in Montana Territory, the fraud, the murders, the conspiracy, do you believe those actions were motivated by revenge for his son's death?" Blake's lawyer stood again. "Objection. Calls for speculation." "Your Honor," Ashford said, "the defense has introduced Senator Blake's character as evidence. The prosecution should be allowed to introduce motive." The judge considered. "I'll allow it, but carefully, Mr. Ashford." Ashford turned back to Cordelia. "Based on what you know, Miss Brennan, do you believe Senator Blake wanted Jonas Holt to suffer?" Cordelia looked at Blake, at his cold, proud face. "Yes," she said. "I believe he wanted Jonas to lose everything. The way he lost his son, I believe he killed Jonas's wife, tried to kill me, tried to kill my baby, all to make Jonas suffer." "Thank you, Miss Brennan." She stepped down. Jonas was called next. He testified about Serafina's death, about the arsenic, about Dr. Kemp's involvement, about the years of debt, of harassment, of threats, about watching Cordelia almost die, watching the baby almost die, about finding the correspondence. The proof, his voice never wavered, never broke. But Cordelia could see the cost of it, the way his hands gripped the rail, the way his jaw worked. When he stepped down, he looked at her, and she knew. He loved her too. The prosecution rested. Blake's defense was simple. Deny everything. The correspondence was forged. The witnesses were lying. Graves had acted alone while Blake was a United States senator, a man of standing, of reputation. Surely the jury would not believe the word of ranchers and factory women over his, but they did. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. They found Harrison Blake guilty on all counts: conspiracy, fraud, murder. They found Thaddeus Graves guilty as well. The judge set sentencing for the following week. But everyone in that courtroom knew what it would be: death. Blake tried to run. 2 nights after the verdict, he attempted to flee Denver. He had money, connections, a private rail car waiting. Federal marshals intercepted him at the station. There was a confrontation. Blake drew a gun. The marshals shot him. He died on the platform. Surrounded by his luggage and his money and his absolute certainty that the law did not apply to men like him. Thaddeus Graves was hanged a week later. Earl Dawson was sentenced to 10 years in prison. And the ranchers of Montana Territory got their land back. All of it, free and clear. Cordelia and Jonas returned to Coldwater Creek 3 weeks after they left. Hattie was waiting on the porch of the Broken Spur. Serafina in her arms. The baby had grown, filled out. Her cry was stronger. Her eyes were open more. Cordelia took her, held her, breathed her in. Was she good? Did she eat? Did she sleep? She was perfect, Hattie said. Cried a bit the first night, but she's settled. She's a good baby, Cordelia. Stop worrying. But Cordelia could not stop worrying, would never stop worrying, because that was what it meant to be a mother. Jonas thanked Hattie, paid her far more than she asked for, walked her to her wagon. When she was gone, he turned to Cordelia. "Can I hold her?" he asked. Cordelia handed him the baby. He took her carefully, like she was made of glass, looked down at her small face. "Hello, Serafina," he said quietly. "We're home." The baby made a small sound. Not quite a cry, not quite a coo. Jonas smiled. It was the first real smile Cordelia had seen on his face since the day they met. Spring came to Montana territory. The snow melted, the grass turned green, the cattle moved to summer pasture. Cordelia planted a garden behind the house, in the place where Serafina, the first Serafina, had tried and failed to make things grow. She planted beans, squash, tomatoes, marigolds along the east edge. Jonas watched her work. "You're good at this," he said. "The soil just needed patience," she said. "It was never stubborn, just neglected." He helped her. They worked together in the warm afternoons, the baby nearby in a basket, sleeping in the sun. And somewhere in those quiet hours, Cordelia felt something she had not felt since she was a child. Peace. Jonas asked her on a Sunday evening. They were sitting on the porch, the baby asleep inside, the sky gone purple and gold. "Cordelia," he said. She turned. He was holding something, a small box. "I don't have much," he said. "This ranch, some land, a few cattle, and a past that's complicated." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, silver, set with a small blue stone. "It was my grandmother's," he said. "It's the only thing I have left from before all of this." He looked at her. "I'm not asking you to marry me because you need a name for the baby, or because it's the proper thing to do. I'm asking because—" He stopped, started again. "Because you're the bravest person I've ever met. Because you make me want to be better. Because when I look at you with Serafina, I see the life I thought I'd lost." He held out the ring. "Will you marry me, Cordelia Brennan? Will you build a life here with me?" Cordelia looked at the ring, at his face, at the mountains beyond. "Yes," she said. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. They were married in the Coldwater Creek Church on the first warm Saturday of summer. Hattie stood at Cordelia's side. Agnes Sullivan had made the dress, simple, white, with enough room for the fact that Cordelia's body had changed, would always be changed. The church was full. Ranchers and their families, store owners, the reformed gossips who had learned their lesson. Even Prudence Ashworth came. She sat in the back, did not speak to Cordelia before the ceremony. But she came. Judge Marcus Wade, the federal judge who had presided over Blake's trial, had traveled from Denver to officiate. He spoke briefly about justice, about second chance, about the importance of community. Then he turned to Jonas. "Do you, Jonas Holt, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," Jonas said, his voice clear. "Sure. And do you, Cordelia Brennan, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Cordelia looked at Jonas, at the man who had seen her at her lowest, who had offered help without conditions, who had stood beside her, not in front of her, always beside her through everything. "I do," she said, her voice carried to the back of the church, strong, certain. They kissed. It was not their first kiss, but it was the first one that meant forever. The church erupted in applause, and Cordelia Brennan became Cordelia Holt. 19 months later, Cordelia stood in the garden, her hands in the Montana soil, the sun warm on her back. Serafina, almost 2 years old now, sat nearby, playing with rocks, talking to herself in the language of toddlers. The garden had flourished. The beans climbed their poles. The tomatoes hung heavy on the vines. The marigolds blazed gold against the fence. Cordelia heard footsteps. Turned. Jonas was walking toward her. He had been out with the cattle since dawn, but he was smiling. He always smiled now. "How are they?" he asked, meaning plants. "Thriving," she said. "The tomatoes will be ready next week." "Good." He sat down on the edge of the garden bed, right there in the dirt, the way he had that first time. Serafina saw him, stood, toddled over on unsteady legs. "Papa," she said. It was one of her first words. Jonas picked her up, settled her on his lap. "Hello, little one," he said. Cordelia watched them, her husband, her daughter, her family. She put her hand on her belly, on the new swell there. Still small, still secret, but growing. Jonas saw the gesture. His eyes went wide. Are you Dicty? Yes, she said quietly. He stared at her. But the doctor said, the doctor was wrong, she said. Turns out your body just needed time, needed healing, she paused, needed the right reason to try again. Jonas set Serafina down gently, stood, crossed to Cordelia. He put his hand over hers, over the place where their child was growing. How far along, he asked. 3 months, maybe 4. The same as when she had arrived, but everything was different now. Are you, his voice cracked, are you happy about it? She looked up at him. I'm terrified, she said, and exhausted, and worried about how Serafina will handle it, and about whether we have enough money for 2 children, and about 1,000 other things. She smiled. And yes, I'm happy. He kissed her, gentle, reverent. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For staying, for fighting, for giving me this. She shook her head. You gave it to me, she said. All of it. The home, the family, the life I thought I'd never have. She looked around, at the ranch, at the mountains, at Serafina playing in the dirt. I came here with nothing, she said quietly. No money, no family, no hope. I came here pregnant and ashamed and certain I would die alone and forgotten. She looked back at him, and instead I found everything. Jonas pulled her close, held her, held their daughter, held the family they had built from nothing but stubbornness and faith and the refusal to give up. In the distance, a rider appeared on the road. They both turned. As the rider got closer, Cordelia could see it was a courier, federal insignia on his jacket. He rode up to the fence, dismounted. Jonas Holt, he called. That's me, Jonas said. The courier handed him a letter, official seal, heavy paper. From Washington, the courier said. President Chester Arthur's office. Jonas opened it, read it. His expression shifted. What is it? Cordelia asked. He handed her the letter. It was an invitation to Washington, D.C., to meet with President Arthur personally. The Blake case had exposed a massive corruption network, railroad fraud across 6 territories, hundreds of families affected. President Arthur wanted Jonas to serve as a special investigator, to help root out the remaining corruption, to ensure justice for the families still fighting for their land. It was a federal appointment, paid position, prestigious. It would mean months in Washington, maybe years. Cordelia looked up from the letter. What do you want to do? She asked. Jonas looked at her, at Serafina, at the ranch, at the life they had built. I want to stay here, he said quietly. I want to raise our children, work my land, grow old with you. He took the letter back. But these families, they need help, the way we needed help, the way no one helped us until Hattie and Agnes and the others decided to stand up. He looked at the mountains. I think about the ranchers who are still fighting, still losing, who don't have proof, don't have justice. He turned back to Cordelia. What do you think I should do? She considered, then said, I think you should write back to President Arthur and tell him you'll do it under 2 conditions. What conditions? First, that the position is based here, in Montana, that you work from the territories, not from Washington, that you stay close to the people you are helping. And second, that I work with you. Jonas blinked. You. I analyzed those land records, Jonas. I found the patterns. I know how these frauds work. I spent 15 years in factories learning how powerful men hide their crimes in paperwork. She stepped closer. You need someone who understands the corruption, who can see through the lies, who won't be intimidated. She smiled slightly. And I need something to do besides worry about 2 children and whether the tomatoes will come in. Jonas looked at her for a long moment. Then he started to laugh. Real laughter. The kind that came from deep in the chest. The kind that meant joy. And all right, he said, we'll do it together. Together, she agreed. They sealed it with a kiss. Serafina, bored with the adult conversation, wandered back to her rocks. The courier left, and Cordelia and Jonas stood in their garden, in the home they had fought for, in the life they had built from nothing. The sun began to set over the Montana mountains, gold and red and purple. It was beautiful. It had always been beautiful. But Cordelia had needed to be broken open to see it, needed to lose everything, needed to be brought to her knees in the mud, in the rain and the shame, only to stand back up, stronger. Do you ever think about that day? Jonas asked quietly. The day you arrived. Every day, Cordelia said. Do you wish it had been different? Wish Earl had been the man he pretended to be? Wish you'd stayed in Ohio? She looked at him. No, she said simply, because all of this was worth every terrible thing that brought me here. She took his hand. I wouldn't change a single moment. Not the rejection, not the accusation, not the fear or the pain or the blood, because it led here to you, to her. She gestured to Serafina, to this child. She put her hand on her belly, to this life. Jonas squeezed her hand. I used to think Serafina's death was the end of my story, he said, that I'd spend the rest of my life alone paying for the sin of surviving. He looked at Cordelia. But you showed me it wasn't the end. It was just, he paused, just the middle, the hard part, the part you have to get through to reach the good part. And this is the good part, Cordelia asked softly. This is the good part, he confirmed. They stood together as the sun dropped below the mountains, as the sky caught fire, as their daughter played in the dirt of the land they would pass to her, and to the child coming, and to whatever children came after. This was their legacy, not the pain, not the injustice, not the things that had been done to them, but what they had built in spite of it all. A home, a family, a life, together. Cordelia Holt formerly, Brennan formerly nobody, formerly the unwanted bride who came with nothing, looked out at her land, at her husband, at her daughter, at her future. And she knew with the absolute certainty of a woman who had earned every inch of it, she was exactly where she was meant to be. She had found her home, and she had built it herself.